presenters.
Yeah.
And then after the presentation, then you would ask these questions and then ask for public comment.
With the phone number,
Yes. And then it just has each item, so you don't have to look back through your agenda for.
Which I did bring, but yeah.
It's hard when you get so many papers going.
Well, if when there's one place to play, this is they're phenomenal.
So
It's spoon-fed to you. It's fantastic.
well, I don't know about that, but we're all learning. And then for your binder, for your chair binder, you had the vice chair binder, so I just thought here's another cover page for you, just
Oh, so that I feel a tiny bit more.
so that you know that you're.
I may have used that vice chair title in an interview this week.
That's good. There you go, James.
Yeah. Okay. And
Ta-da.
ta-da! How's that feel? I mean, because I've got this one, but this one's something else. This one's not.
Oh yeah, so
Yes.
and that's in here.
Oh, I don't have to bring that in. welcome. Good evening. On behalf of the Commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the August 24th City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. This 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizen complaints as to operational rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint powers agencies as the city may be a member or which relate to such utility enterprises. Members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please put your electronics devices on silent. And Lynn, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bielski,
Here.
Commissioner DeLacy,
Here.
Commissioner DeMarkey,
Here.
Commissioner Granger, Commissioner Knox,
Here.
Commissioner Maish will
Is
be
excused.
and then Chair Webb.
Present. And if Commissioner Knox could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So item number 4 on our agenda is public comments. This item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record. Members of the public may offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353.
Just wait for phone calls.
And we're waiting to see if we have a phone call. Yeah. All right. Approval of the minutes is our next item on the agenda for our July 27th, 2021 meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Next on the agenda is the requests and presentations part of our meeting. The first item is the Roseville Electric Utility Monthly Update with Electric Assistant Directors Sean Matcham and Todd White.
Thank you, Chair Webb, and good evening, members of the Commission. Sean Matcham, Assistant Director with Roseville Electric. Also with me this evening is Todd White, Assistant Director, another Assistant Director with the Electric Department. We have a brief update of notable items that we've got going on at the electric utility that we wanted to brief the Commission on. We also have later on the agenda a presentation on our risk management policies. But before that, the first thing I wanted to note for the Commission is to update you on 2 items I think of importance. The first item is an update on our rate proposal outreach and workshops that we've recently started. As the Commission is well aware, we started our public outreach earlier in the month with regard to our rate proposal, which is a rate increase for all our customer classes, our residential and customer classes, commercial classes. We started our public process and held our first public workshop on August 17th, last week. And we also met with the Arcona board on Thursday afternoon to preview what we're recommending as a rate proposal going forward. I wanted to remind the Commission and members of the public that we still have 2 additional public workshops that we will be hosting to review and explain our rate proposal and really the justification for our rate increase, which we will be advancing over the next several months. For the public and for your benefit, the next public workshop that we will be hosting will be on August 26th at 5:30 p.m. That's this Thursday. And the third and final public workshop will be held on August 31st at 5:30 p.m. next Tuesday. Both of these are virtual events, Microsoft Teams events, and you can find information and register for participating in those events through our website. That can be found at roseville.ca.us/rates. In addition, you can look to our website, search for Roseville Electric Utility. That will bring you to our full website. And there's a great big banner that you can't miss on our front page that talks about our electric rate proposal. And so you'll find all the information you will need there, a summary of the rate proposal and how to register for these events, and we'll get information out to those that register. So important item. We just wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to participate, and we've been doing a lot of outreach on these workshops to encourage public participation as we advance this further forward. After the workshops, and as a reminder for the commission, we will come back to this commission at its September 28th meeting to provide a formal recommendation to this commission. That recommendation will take into consideration the public workshops, the comments that we've received through that process, as well as some of the outreach that we have had with our key accounts and large customers here in Roseville. So the next item meaningful for this commission is that September 28th meeting, and then the path forward after that is that we would advance a recommendation through our city council in the October-November timeframe. And if approved by our council, rates would be effective beginning January 1, 2022. And so just a reminder again of the workshops, the process we're in, and the path ahead. The second item I just want to note, and it's just an update, it's a meaningful item for us at the electric department. Last year, as many of you are aware, we did purchase the 116 South Grant Street building, which is just across Vernon Square here. We had a vision to build that out to centralize our customer service function, our utility billing function, and really create a one-stop shop for our customer engagement for the utility. And longer term, locating additional staff over there to bring everyone together at one building. So I just wanted to report at last week's city council meeting, the 18th, we did award, or the council awarded a construction contract to advance the improvements and renovations for that building for the first and second floor. And that's really, again, to gear it up to make sure we can move over our customer solutions folks. So just wanted to update you on that. We've also completed some window repair work. There's been a lot of activity over at the building over the last couple months, and that will continue over the next several months. We expect a 3-month construction period for the upcoming renovations, and very, very excited about getting that done and getting staff over there and then having that one-stop shop for our customer engagement. So just wanted to provide a brief update on what the path ahead is on those items, or that item. With that, I'll stop with my update, and I know Todd has an update on another item.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Webb, Commissioners. Wanted to give you an update about something you may have seen in the news recently. We are going to be siting a couple of emergency power generators at the Roseville Energy Park on behalf of the state. This is a bit of a follow-up to a presentation we gave a couple months ago about the general state of the electricity grid in California, especially potential issues with the California ISO and their controlled grid and potential power shortages. We saw that last summer with some rolling blackouts. There was a period in June where the transmission line to the Pacific Northwest was largely taken out of service due to wildfire, which strained the grid almost to the point of blackouts as well. In response to this, the state and through the Department of Water Resources has looked for sites to add some emergency generation. They're procuring multiple 30-megawatt gas-fired generators that come in on trailers and can hook up to existing infrastructure. Finding infrastructure in the state that can accommodate that is not easy. You need a gas line, access to water, a way to get the power out. You need a transformer. And there were actually very few sites in the state where the appropriate infrastructure is there. The Roseville Energy Park was identified as one of those sites and quickly rose to the top of, or near the top of the list that the Department of Water Resources was looking at. We spent a good deal of time, Mr. Mendel and I have been in a lot of meetings lately negotiating various contracts. And we came to council with a term sheet last Monday for an arrangement that would allow the Department of Water Resources to site 2 of these 30-megawatt generating units at the Roseville Energy Park for a period through the end of 2023. Roseville would be compensated for all our costs. In addition, we would get a fairly sizable lease payment for allowing the Department of Water Resources to use our facilities. As well, we would have an option to purchase the units at a fairly good price at the end of the term. So we're moving forward with that. The council gave approval to the term sheet and an initial agreement that allowed DWR and its contractors to enter the site last Monday. They began grading the site yesterday, so things are moving very quickly. We should be taking to council an updated, more formal agreement for the site lease and usage to council next Wednesday, with a couple other agreements on operations and maintenance and energy services to follow. And this is starting to get a little bit of press coverage, and it's a very, while it doesn't directly, this is meant to serve the California ISO grid, it will provide voltage stability to Roseville, as well as it provides a really good payment in the meantime, and a great opportunity at the end of the term to get some generation that could be valuable to Roseville in the future. So with that, I will stop, and if you have any questions about Sean's update or my update, we'll be happy to take them.
Questions?
That was excellent presentation by both of you gentlemen. Just curiosity, you had a workshop, and it was virtual. You think that increased participation, or?
Yeah, we haven't gone out with a rate increase for 7 years, so the benchmark is some time ago. But we did have maybe a half a dozen members, I believe, of the public that listened in. This was the first of the 3 public workshops that we are holding. We did meet with the Arcona board and present on their agenda on Thursday of last week. We had probably 25 or so folks on that line, and we were able, obviously, to notice the upcoming workshops, and so we were strongly encouraging folks to participate. But so I'd say lightly attended on the first workshop, and we're doing a lot of outreach to really draw attention to the next 2, so encouraging participation.
Questions over here?
I must have missed it. What type of generators is DWR proposing?
They're TM 2500s. They're like an LM 2500, but on a trailer. That's the T.
So gas burning?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay.
natural gas.
Gotcha.
Yeah, General Electric turbines.
Are they all self-contained? Turbines on the skids as well as?
Yeah, so they come in and on 3 trailers that get hooked together. They don't actually leave the trailers; they get jacked up. But one trailer has the turbine itself, another trailer has the generator, another trailer has the control building, and then there's lots of parts that come in on other trucks to hook them all up together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Todd, when do you think that it's likely to be generating electricity?
So the target is September 17th. So amazingly quick.
Oh, wow.
Fast. Wow.
That's,
And-
wow.
Yeah, amazingly quick.
That's fast.
Sadly, we might need it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, during the first year of operations, they'll only be used in ISO-declared energy emergencies, so they won't run very much. But when the state absolutely needs power, they'll be there to provide it.
Good investment.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. I believe the next item is a presentation on the risk management.
Yes.
And it's being presented by Petra Wallace. Welcome.
Yes,
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Webb and Commissioners. Tonight we will have a fun topic after the new generators as assessing risk and managing risk. So we will talk about Roseville Electric's energy risk management program. My name is Petra Wallace, and I oversee the risk and compliance group with the electric department. So what is risk management? Risk management is a decision-making process aimed at reducing the probability of experiencing a loss due to uncertain or unplanned events. So with some of the questions that we are trying to answer when we address risk management, that what is the magnitude of the potential loss, and what can we do to prevent or mitigate the loss, the potential loss that is out there. So when we are looking at energy risk management, those are the questions that we are trying to answer. Some of the examples of the risk that we are managing at Roseville Electric, is commodity price risk. So we purchase electricity as well as natural gas to provide electricity to Roseville residents. The price of electricity varies a lot, especially during the summer month. So we have different policies in place to mitigate that risk. We also have the volumetric risk, so we need to make sure that our load forecast or the forecasted load that we think Roseville residents will be using is aligned with the supply that we have on hand, just to make sure we don't have brownouts or blackouts within the city limits. Operational risks, we have 2 power plants, so we want to make sure that those operate appropriately and safely, and we can manage all the risk associated with those generating units. We also manage counterparty risk. So when we are talking about counterparties, we are talking about businesses that we do transactions or trades with. So when we purchase electricity or natural gas from certain companies, we want to make sure that their financial health is solid, so we are not putting the city in any kind of financial risk. The last one that we are focusing a lot on is regulatory and environmental risk. So those are addressed as they come up, and I'm sure all of you guys are aware of all the renewable portfolio standard requirements and the greenhouse gas emission requirements that we are addressing and proactively managing, so we don't have price hikes within our rates. So why we have an energy risk management program? As I mentioned, we would like to address and mitigate all the risks that I mentioned, so we don't need to do rate cases, as Sean mentioned earlier today, too often. So we haven't had a rate increase in quite a while, thanks to our risk management policies and power supply transactions, so we could keep all our rates low compared to surrounding utilities. We also buy and sell large amounts of energy regularly, so that can help manage the price risk, because we will talk about one of the policies that helps. And we want to have this energy risk management policy so we have reliable power, so we can serve the community and keep a high quality of life in Roseville. Next slide. So energy risk management process, what we usually do is we identify the risks that are out there, and it can be like a bottom-up or top-down approach. We constantly evaluating risk or identifying risks that are out there and that can cause us trouble. Once we identify the risk, we analyze them, so that's more on a mathematical sometimes and sometimes strategic analytic review of the risks that are out there that we identified. once we analyze them, that we evaluate them compared to all the other risks that we face in the utilities, so we can prioritize them, that which one should be the top 5 or top 10 for the upcoming year that we address. And then we can implement mitigations tool to address the risks that are out there. Once we have done that, then we keep monitoring those risks and making sure that our mitigation processes that are in place are working, and if not, then we can adjust. So this is a continuous process of identifying, analyzing, evaluating, so we do that on a yearly basis for all the risks that are out there, sometimes more often, just to make sure that we cover our bases. So this brings up the next topic of the risk tolerance, which is the risk tolerance sets a limit beyond which additional risk should not be taken. So whenever we are setting up our risk policies, we take a look at what's the city's risk tolerance and what's the electric utilities risk tolerance. So after what point do we want to take risk to gain extra value? So whenever we took a look at this generating project, we did a risk assessment, and we found it beneficial to move ahead and get these units on site. So again, the decision-making activities play a role into the risk policies. So let's talk about the 4 risk policies that Roseville Electric currently have. So the first one, we have an energy risk management policy that I will talk in detail about the policies in the next few slides. Then we have an energy trading authority policy that helps you decide who can trade and what. Then we have an energy hedge policy that provides guidelines of what to trade and for how far. And we have an energy credit policy. So first, let's talk about the energy risk management policy that sets energy risk management objectives and establishes risk governance structures and responsibilities. So this is the document that links risk management to key business processes. So if we go to the next slide, we can see that this policy describes the different functions of the City Council, the Risk Oversight Committee, and the Risk Management Committee. The Risk Oversight Committee is established by the City Council, and we usually meet 2-3 times a year, sometimes quarterly, depending on the topics. It provides an oversight of the city's risk governance and recommend risk policy changes to City Council. So before we do any policy changes, we would come to the Risk Oversight Committee and make sure that everybody's on agreement and recommending the policy changes to Council before we get those approved. The Risk Oversight Committee has 9 voting members, so 2 of them from Roseville Public Utilities, 2 council members, city council members, and other executives from the city. The next policy that we have is the Energy Trading Authority policy. So this is a little bit more fun. So this describes who can trade. This means either the city manager or city council or power management services provider or staff. So it describes who can trade and then what products that person can trade. So can they trade natural gas or electricity? Is it a financial transaction or a physical transaction? Is it renewable energy or is it an energy exchange? So there's a lot of different options that we have different matrices defining who can trade what. It also describes or gives guidelines where can we do those transactions. So you have different transaction hubs. So electricity can be purchased at a certain area we have transmission lines to. Same with natural gas. So it defines what areas can we transact just to make sure that we have access to those locations. And then how long they can trade. So can they trade out to 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, or just a day ahead? So there's different term limits when we are doing transaction that defines who can do what. The next one is the energy hedge policy. So hedge is a transaction that reduces the likelihood of adverse price or cost fluctuations. So for example, if you would have a choice to fix the price of gasoline when you go to the gas station for the next month or 3 months. It's something similar to that. So we fix the price for a certain amount of electricity or natural gas for the next year or 2 years or 3 years. So the policy defines what we can do. So it defines basically our risk tolerance, this hedge policy, and our hedging goals, that what our goal, what are we trying to do, and why are we trying to do. It also describes the reporting requirements that we need to provide to the Risk Management Committee or the Risk Oversight Committee. So the next slide will show a little bit more visual of what our hedge policy is doing. So the first bar shows the whole bar with the green, and then the gray shows the forecasted load for the next 12-month period. So we are always looking at 12-month period, the next 12 months, so we are not looking at calendar year or fiscal year. So that shows the forecasted load for Roseville. The green shaded area shows the amount of electricity that has a fixed price that we have already in, for example, storage. But we have it on the books, so that portion is fixed. So you can see that little gray area, that's the area that it's open to the market, so that can fluctuate. But again, we can hedge those out 3 months ahead or 1 month ahead or day ahead, so it's not that fluctuating. So for the first 12-month period, the hedging requirement, we have to be hedged minimum of 90% of the forecasted low, so that's the bottom black line, or the maximum of 110% of the forecasted load. So the second year, the hedging requirement changes. So that goes from 70% to 100% of the forecasted load. And then for third year, it goes from 45% to 80% of the forecasted load should be hedged or fixing the price so we don't have fluctuations in purchasing the electricity or natural gas to serve the load. Therefore, no rate increases because it takes a while to recover those costs. The fourth year, we just have it there just to see what's happening and how well are we prepared for year 3. The next one is the energy credit policy, and that is our last policy that we have that defines how credit limits are set for each counterparty. So we take a look at S&P ratings and Moody's ratings and Fitch ratings, and based on that, we have a set amount what we feel comfortable each company should have. And then we also look at their financials each year to make sure that they are financially stable, because sometimes those rating agencies lag a little behind on the current situation. So it's somewhat similar to anybody applying for a credit card. They take a look at your books and your financials, making sure that you are stable before you can get a loan to purchase a house or to buy a car. So we are doing the same thing, but we are doing for different businesses and counterparties just to make sure that the city is covered on a day-to-day basis. So we track the mark-to-market conditions and purchases, and the last few months we had to receive collateral from other companies because their rating dropped down, and they had to post some cash for the city because our exposure was higher than expected. So that really protects the city quite a bit going forward. So next slide we have, so why do we have all these policies? As I mentioned, we want to make sure that we stay in budget. We mitigate all the risks that are out there. We are staying reliable and keeping the lights on for Roseville. Create stable rates that haven't changed in a while and operate efficiently and safely. So any questions on the policies or the program that we have in place?
Commissioners, questions?
No.
On this side, questions?
No. Would you mind taking public comment?
Yeah, and could we take public comment now for the this item? Our public comment is available by calling 916-774-5353. So we have no phone call-ins. I'd like to move to the next agenda item. This is the Roseville Electric Energy Risk Management Overview with that was 6.2. We're moving to item number 6.3. This is Environmental Utilities Monthly Update with Environmental Utilities Assistant Director Sean Bigley.
All right. Good evening, Chair Webb and members of the PUC, Public Utilities Commission. I'm Sean Bigley. I'm the Assistant Environmental Utilities Director. And I just want to give you a few updates this evening regarding environmental utilities. So first, I just wanted to start off with some capital projects updates. First, the Pleasant Grove expansion and the energy recovery projects are progressing well. Startup and commissioning of the new facilities will start near the end of this year and should be fully operational in the summer of 2022. Additionally, close by that site is the Westside Tank and Pump Station project, which is about 75% complete, and we expect to commission the facility early next year with 12 million gallon tank storage and as well as a pumping facility, which we anticipate to be active by May of 2022. This facility will be a key system addition that will be especially helpful operationally if drought conditions persist in 2022. So we're looking forward to getting that project wrapped up here shortly. Regarding some field research that our staff are doing on the waste services side, EU staff has been traveling to evaluate different waste and organic processing technologies to determine operational reliability and costs to inform potential future decisions on investments the city may have to make in this area. So recently they made a trip out to Monterey County to visit a site, and they're doing some additional site visits, kind of doing their homework relative to potential facilities as well, types of facilities as well as technology that can be used in the context of waste services and processing material. As far as drought, just really quick. So with respect to drought, basically system conditions continue to be critically dry. So when I say system conditions, I'm really referencing the Central Valley Project, which Roseville is a part of through Folsom Reservoir, as well as the related systems in the State Water Project. And so conditions obviously continue to be dry. Obviously, we're not in the precipitation season right now. So as we approach October, we'll see how the precipitation season starts and see if we see a change over the next coming months. Within the Water Utility Division, we're actually planning for a potentially dry 2022. Doing quite a bit of contingency planning, scenario planning, things like that to really get ourselves ready for 2022 if it happens to be another dry year. And what's really kind of critical is really examining the peak months, which are the summer months that we really have to plan for in terms of just making sure we're able to meet demand, system pressure, et cetera. As a result, August 3rd, City of Roseville moved to a mandatory Stage 2 drought. This is actually a set of requirements that's actually established in the Roseville Municipal Code. Included in there are specific watering days, and that's really based on the time of year. Overall, there's a 20% conservation goal within the city of Roseville. It does not apply to residents. What we're really asking residents to do is focus in on specifically outdoor landscape watering. That's the huge potential there in terms of reducing water use, as well as looking for leaks on property. And that's really the main focus that we're really trying to emphasize. What we're trying to be careful with is understanding we're still in a pandemic. And so we have to be very careful in terms of how we message to residents with respect to using water as a product that's used for health and safety. So, of course, if the CDC is asking for folks to wash their hands, we want to be supportive by making sure we don't provide messaging that counters that guidance. At this point in time, just early on, just based on water production data that we're getting on a daily basis, we are starting to see results of that new requirement being put in place. But again, it's too early to tell. We'll really start to get an understanding of where it's trending after we look over several months, really, to get to that point. And a lot of times we explain water conservation. It's not like a light switch that you flip on. It takes a lot of effort in terms of public education, a lot of field work that has to occur. And so it'll take several months for the city of Roseville to even reach a 20% target. So just important to note that. And an additional aspect of this is that the City of Roseville City Council, as well as the Placer County Water Agency Board of Directors, recently approved a side letter that's part of our Middle Fork Project water supply contract that was signed in 2010. Essentially what that is it's an agreement where PCWA would recognize both the use of groundwater within Roseville service area as well as any actual conservation results in 2021. After that's calculated, they would take that amount of saved water and essentially apply that as a credit that we can use in 2022. So we'd be able to essentially dispatch that water in 2022. And if we're in a dry year, that'll be especially important. The other benefit of that as well is that credit water will actually stay in PCWA's reservoirs, which are upstream of Folsom Reservoir. So it's all within sort of our local control. So that's just an innovative way we're working with our partner agency in this current drought. In addition, in terms of infrastructure, we are expediting 2 aquifer storage groundwater wells. We're basically in roughly about 30% design at this point in time, working through some of those plans. We're looking at roughly an 18 to 24-month timeline to get those expedited wells in place, and those are located in West Roseville. We're also working with PCWA to make some capacity improvements at our Tinker Road intertie, which would expand the amount of capacity that we can actually get through those interties. And that allows us to actually access water in such a way that is not dependent on Folsom Reservoir. So this is a really critical capital improvement that we're trying to get underway. We're also doing some telemetry improvements at the 5-star intertie to allow for more automated operation, which is important from an efficiency standpoint. Both of those projects we're ideally looking for completion by May of 2022, get those in place, and that'll help us in terms of mitigating through the drought. In addition, we're also making some other additional improvements, including automation at our Pleasant Grove pumpback station, which is important because when we talk about sort of active operation, being able to basically operate parts of the system off of a laptop computer allows us to really dispatch our staff in a very efficient way and allows us to kind of be a much more agile operation. And that's going to be important, especially during drought operations. So with that, that concludes the EU update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anything on this side?
If, of course, Lord knows what weather's going to do. It's so unpredictable. But you have plans for long-term storage. But assuming, have you projected what would happen even if an extreme drought extends beyond next year? And of course, we'll of course be on maximum rationing, I'm sure, of water. But have you projected what might occur? Let's say 2 years downstream if this situation continues?
Yeah. So what we actually did, as far as just understanding kind of how we would plan for that circumstance. So we actually went through an exercise internally where we made certain assumptions in terms of worst case scenario. If you had a dead pool situation at Folsom, basically what that would mean is the water that you could receive from the reservoir would be restricted to an emergency pump. So the amount of actual water you would get would be pretty well restricted, public health and safety levels. And then what we did is we did kind of the math in terms of what's our current infrastructure. And then what if we can get interties expanded within this period of time? And then what if we get 2 additional wells? What does that look like? You do the math, and essentially what you have is you end up having a delta in that calculation. What that delta is essentially it's the demand management side or the conservation side. And so we went through that exercise and we made certain assumptions. And when we went through all that math, essentially what it pointed to was a range. Best case, you can probably, if you're in peak summer in 2022 and you're trying to meet demands, best case, we could probably get by with 10% conservation from our customers. Worst case, if we don't get the infrastructure that we're trying to expedite done in time, we would probably have to go maybe as high as 30%. So the middle ground is we made an assumption that the wells might be a little tougher to get done because they're a much more complex CIP project, but the interties are less complex and we could probably get those done. So where that kind of drove us in terms of the math calculation is 20%. And so the reason of the timing is again, conservation doesn't happen overnight. You just can't flip a switch on and automatically it's there. So what we were really trying to do is we're really trying to just manage risk for 2022. If we get precipitation, snow, I'll be dancing in the streets first. But second, what we have to just be cognizant of is that conditions are so dry. The estimate right now is that I heard recently is in order for us to be in a normal year next year, we have to get 130% of precipitation to get there. So we're already kind of in a deficit. So what we did as staff is we really wanted to provide a recommendation to city leadership that's prudent, that manages risk. And so that's kind of how we landed at that number based on that calculation. So it was pretty much a data-driven decision more than anything.
Questions here?
What additional education are we given about the water restrictions? Because I get up pretty early in the morning and see the wet sidewalks throughout the city still every day. So are we still pushing forward with some additional education for the public?
Yeah, so one of the biggest tools in the drought, what's in the Roseville Municipal Code, one of the biggest tools that we have is designated watering days. And really the reason why those are so important is that we have water waste patrols all the time, right? We have night patrols that look at commercial properties, making sure there's not waste out there. During normal times, we also do water waste patrols. It just happens. But oftentimes, it's usually because we have a neighbor that calls in or somebody calls in about water waste. So from an operational standpoint, the fact that you've got designated watering days makes it very, very obvious in terms of who's following and who's not. So if we're driving around on a Monday in a residential neighborhood and we see watering happening, or if a neighbor calls in or somebody calls in, it gives us the ability to actually quickly identify where those areas where water isn't being used wisely, and then we can deal with it. So what we do is we work with the customer. What we do is we essentially tag them, let them know that you're watering during this day, and we work with the customer to address that. We also, in many cases, work directly with the customer in terms of identifying leaks, helping them out. We've got a very, very robust social media presence. We already had it before the drought. We do a lot of mailers. We do a lot of e-blasts. So it's pretty pervasive. And then at the regional level, we work with Regional Water Authority, and they have presence on television stations, radio stations. So it's kind of hard to escape. It's out there, and so we kind of try to hit it on all different fronts. So, but like I said, we are seeing actually real results as we speak based on daily production data, so it's working.
Have more questions?
So just to follow up on the wet sidewalks, because I noticed my neighbor across the street this morning, but the 3 days can be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Is it a set 3 days a week right now?
Set days a
Is
week.
it Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay, so I'm in compliance and my neighbor's not, then, in theory. So, okay.
You can go beat them up.
Now, when we go to 2 days, what do we do then? Do we pick 2 days, or do we do?
No, they're set days. I don't have that right
That's
off the top of my head,
that's
but
fine. I'm just
yeah,
curious.
but yeah, we'll definitely message that, and that's coming here pretty soon.
Any other questions for the staff? I'd like to open this for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to come forward and address the commission? Members of the public can offer public comment by phone by calling 916-774-5353. We have no public comment coming in by phone. I'd like to move to the next agenda item. Yeah. So this is the Environmental Utilities Recycled Water Program update. And presenting will be Todd Jordan. He's the Environmental Utilities Process Engineer. Welcome.
Thank you. Is that on?
I have no idea.
Does that work better? All right.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Thank you. And good evening, Chair Webb and Commissioners. My name is Todd Jordan. I'm Process Engineer for the Environmental Utilities in the Wastewater Division, and I'm here to present the Recycled Water Program update. So the first slide just shows the history of the Recycled Water Program. It started back in the early 90s and has grown ever since. We've grown to about 135 sites right now, and that keeps adding every year due to new development or conversion of different sites that are currently on potable water. As you can imagine, with the drought conditions that we have now and that we had back in 2015, there's quite a few sites that are looking at the feasibility of converting over to recycled water. And I think it's because they see that within West Roseville, a lot of the parks that are irrigated with the recycled water stay plush throughout the year and even through the drought years because there hasn't been a restriction on the use of recycled water. A couple things to note on this history is back in 2015, we did get an early jump, and with the stage 3 drought that we had there, prior to entering that stage 3 drought, we did develop a program for using recycled water for construction use. So that's dust control, soil compaction, and some street sweeping, just cleaning the streets out in those areas. And then we also had a kind of a short-lived residential program, and that was where folks that had stressed lawns and gardens can come to one of our sites or a couple of our sites, fill buckets. They could fill tanks with recycled water, take that back to the home, and irrigate those stressed landscapes and gardens. And short-lived because of issues of how to take that water from the site out to their homes, and I can get into that a little bit later. Just a couple years ago, we did move to expand the recycled water system. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we looked at a bunch of different alternatives to take use out easterly to some of our neighboring areas and develop different programs. And that study's finished, and we moved into a feasibility analysis of a couple of those alternatives. Recently, just this year, we did adopt an increase in the recycled water rate, which raised the rate from 50% of the potable rate up to 60% of that. That's the latest thing that happened with recycled water. So why recycled water? I think it was a great idea for the city to develop this program and really grow it through the years. It's part of our water portfolio, and along with the Folsom Reservoir and our really healthy, looks like very healthy aquifer storage system that Sean talked about earlier. There's a constant supply of recycled water. It is supplied by our wastewater flows, and the toilets don't stop flushing, so we always have a supply of recycled water. It's conservation friendly. With every increase that we have with recycled water, we're offsetting the use of potable water, which I think is a high goal that we have for the city. And again, our parks that are on recycled water really show why that's a very valuable program that we have. And again, it's less costly to the end user because it is a lesser cost option to using potable water. So generally with the uses, our non-potable uses are predominantly irrigation. We irrigate parks, schools, golf courses, as you can see, the streetscapes. With development, we do mandate that if there's a development within an area that has the recycled water distribution system, we mandate those developments to utilize recycled water for irrigating their landscapes. With the start of the non-potable uses for construction, that program really grew. The first year we had it, we used about 50 acre feet, and that was during that stage 3 drought. Recent calculations show that in 2020, we've increased that usage by 50%. We're near 75 acre feet of use just for this recycled water part of the program for recycled water. Some of the other uses as our partners within the city with Roseville Electric, they do use recycled water for their fueling system at the Roseville Energy Park, which is a pretty cool thing to see if you ever go by there. It rains recycled water on the side of those cooling units. We also we have one customer that uses it for agricultural uses. So the next slide shows, top left corner is kind of where you can pick up recycled water if it was to be used for residential use. And again, some pictures that show how you fill it, some of the tanks that you can use. We did find that it is pretty tough to take that recycled water to the homes just because you have to either trailer it, and if you have a truck, there's question on if you need a tanker endorsement to haul a large amount of water in the back of the truck. So we're very limited in using that back in 2015, and we really haven't had much interest in that program since then. But it is available. This slide just shows our recycled water supply. The pink line outlines our ultimate service area, which includes parts of Placer County and the South Placer Municipal Utility District. The blue line shows the boundary of the city of Roseville, and the black line is the grade break between wastewater flows that go to our Pleasant Grove treatment plant up to the northeast or northwest, and then our Dry Creek plant down to the south. So the supply for the recycled water program comes from both of our wastewater plants. They average about 8 million gallons a day of wastewater. At the Pleasant Grove plant, we do not have any storage on site. And at the Dry Creek wastewater plant, we do have some on-site storage, very minimal, and that's because we repurposed some chlorine contact basins that we no longer use. Our supply at Dry Creek is affected by a permit requirement to discharge 4 million gallons a day into Dry Creek per the permit. So that does affect the way that we operate the system. Much of our system is backed up with potable water in case the recycled water system does fail, but we do have those at our golf courses and at the treatment plant. So our demand for 2020, we had about 135 connections, and the number of connections does keep growing. Individual demands range between 20 and 1,800 GPM. The lower end's a small irrigated site, like a streetscape, where the larger number is typically for golf courses when they're filling their ponds. Our peak day for 2020 was in July, and that was 8 million gallons a day. That approaches the amount of supply that we have at one of our treatment plants. And one of the goals is that if we can ever get one plant to where that they don't discharge, everything gets turned into recycled water and sent into the system. We're getting close to that. Our largest draw that we had was 13,500 GPM. That is a big draw. It does affect the system significantly, and hopefully our demands can surpass the wastewater supply of one facility. And we do shave the peak demands in the recycled water system by utilizing storage that we have in the system or at our customers' sites. So that storage is about 11.5 million gallons. The sites that we have within the city are the West Roseville Pump Station, which sits just next to the Roseville Energy Park. And we have 2 1 million gallon tanks there. We have a 1.5 million gallon tank at the North Zone Pump Station, which is on the north end of the Wood Creek Golf Course. And then at each of the golf courses, we do have pond storage. So what this graph has shown is since 1998, we have a pretty healthy supply of wastewater coming into the plants, which is shown in green, and then the purple sections show how much of that wastewater that we've turned into recycled water. And we have a large gap to close between the amount of supply and the amount of product that we have for recycled water. Back in 2015, we did about 18% of that then, and it seems to be pretty steady since then. This is another graph just to kind of show that on the top line you have the wastewater supply throughout the year, and on the bottom purple line it shows how much the irrigation demand is or the recycled water demand is on the system. This is not to scale. It's just a picture to show on the shoulder months of the irrigation season, we do have a lot of water that we do discharge out to the creek, and it is available to use for recycled water. And that kind of leads us into looking for different options to expand the system so that we can try to utilize some of that water that's going to the creeks. So back in 2019, we conducted an alternatives analysis, and we looked at 26 different alternatives to expand the system. And here was listed the criteria and some of the items that we considered. But generally, we looked at taking a pipeline out to the east side of Roseville and try to pick up different parks, schools, cemeteries along the way to irrigate, and looked at the cost of that versus the revenue that it would generate. And it showed that for many of the alternatives that we found out there, it was just really expensive to put in a pipeline. As you can imagine, some of these pipelines are up to 5 miles long, which we couldn't generate enough revenue to really pay back that system. It didn't make, it wasn't really feasible cost-wise. We've looked at even expanding the recycled water system up to some of our neighbors up north, like the Rio Bravo Energy Park, to see if they can take recycled water, which would be great. But again, the cost of the pipeline to go up to the Rio Bravo site was too expensive, and it didn't work out. But through that feasibility or that alternatives analysis, we did come up with some potable reuse projects that we've looked at in the past, but that was back in 2006. And what we found back then was it was pretty expensive to actually utilize potable reuse in our system, and that's because we used reverse osmosis as the alternative to analyze. We took another look at these options today because we do have more alternatives for treatment technologies that can allow us to do potable reuse, and we're at the tail end of that study to see what the costs are going to be for what we think we can do for potable reuse. Very early in the stages for that. The operating goals for the recycled water system is we want to balance the demands of the system between both of our wastewater treatment plants. We use the treatment plants to maintain system redundancy. We also utilize the storage within the system that I described earlier. We want to keep all the reservoirs full. That includes the ponds at the golf courses. And that's to maintain the aesthetic look of the golf courses. In addition to if that water level drops, if you guys any of you are golfers, you probably notice that there's an odor that comes with that. I call it earthy, kind of a creek smell, but it's an odor nonetheless. And we want to keep the appropriate pressure for our direct tap customers. And I think one of the biggest ones is keeping those parks green, because having a green plush park really sells the value of our recycled water system. And one of the other goals is to keep our public educated and to continue the outreach that we do so well within our EU group here. Part of the education for the system is letting folks know that during a drought, these sites that are very green are recycled water and not potable water. Because we've gotten those calls, very angry customers that have to cut back to 2 days a week, and it's a tough call to take, but they feel better afterwards. The last slide I have for you just kind of shows the breakdown of our recycled water use. Golf courses being the largest user with all of them combined. The Roseville Energy Park is our largest single customer, and then parks and streetscapes are next up. Like I said, construction use is growing, and that has to do with all the development that we have in the city. And I think it's going to continue to grow until we reach that border of the city. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions on this side?
That's good.
Questions over here? It looks like there's no questions from the commissioners. I'd like to open this for public comment. And members of the public may dial in by calling 916-774-5353. We don't have any calls. I'd like to move to the next item on our agenda, which is the board member and commissioner staff reports. Are there any reports from this side?
None.
And over here? I have a very brief one. I would like to thank our newest commission members for joining us and agreeing to be part of our process over the next several years. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Bielski and also Commissioner DeMarchi.
Thank you.
If there are no other staff reports or questions or comments from the commission, I'd like to move to the next item, which is, are there any agenda items that someone would like to add to our proposed calendar? I'm not seeing any. So at this point, may I have a motion to adjourn? And can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
Sweet. Listen, dude.
Hey, you got me covered. Thank you.
That was good. You did a great job.
I've run meetings before, it's just a different, slightly different format, so.
Yeah, I can tell that you're comfortable with it.
It's like, you know, it's. Yeah, that's for you.
Thank you.